Good evening and welcome. The Triduum is a powerful time of the year. It's a time for us to continue to trust that God is active and present in our lives. It is a time for us to gather together, and it is a time for us to reflect on what it means to be a believing people. The early church initially struggled with what death meant of Jesus, but God would not allow that to be the final chapter of his or our lives. So this evening we have a trifecta. We can listen to music to help elevate our hearts and our spirits. We can ponder the beauty of Scripture, and through any worship aid or prayer aid, Magnificat, this breaking bread, and many others, there's always reflections that speak to people of faith. So this evening we're going to have beautiful music. We are going to have the powerful scriptures that help us grow in faith, and we will have words of reflection that perhaps are already near and dear to you, perhaps might be something that you heard a while ago and forgot about, or maybe it will be something completely new. So for those of you who are here, I welcome you. We have college students home from Tennessee. We have a viola player who flew in from Arizona to be with us, and we have all of you who are here at the Church of St. Mary to take time on this day that Christians call Good Friday to come together, to pray, and to continue to turn to God. So if you're going to be very busy tomorrow traveling or getting ready for Easter, we hope that your Easter celebration is filled with the joy that amazes us of Christ's resurrection. And let's open our hearts and our spirits and our minds and our ears to what the director of music, Mr. Marek Rahelski, has desired and is bringing to us to deepen our faith this day that we call Good Friday. So very special welcome to the musicians that are with us and all you who fill the body of the church.
When they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him along with the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." An innocent man stands condemned. His name is Jesus. His name is Anthony Porter. His name is Rolando Cruz. His name is that of any of the more than 100 men who have been released from death rows or maximum security cell blocks after the miracle of DNA proved their innocence. His name might be that of any of the several hundred men and women who have not been released, but whose passage through the justice system ended as Jesus ended, in ignominious death. To be innocent and yet condemned, to die as a criminal, whether on a cross or on a gurney, with arm outstretched to receive the lethal needle, is awful enough. But to be innocent and yet found guilty at trial, that may even be more nightmarish. Of course, Jesus knew what sort of an exercise this trial was. He maintained his silence because he knew he was going to be found guilty no matter what the facts of the case might be. That was not an exercise in truth-seeking, but a political proceeding to rid the community of a dangerous disturber of the peace and a challenger of the established order. But the innocent yet condemned men of our time, their predicaments result from our society's most highly ritualized exercise in truth-seeking, the criminal trial. How can justice miscarry so egregiously, so unforgivably? The word is broached: forgive. It cannot be for any of us, participants in a way in the injustice done to these condemned innocents, to speak to them of forgiveness. But Jesus has already spoken powerfully with his word and his example on the day of his execution. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other, answering, rebuked him, saying, "Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Surely I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." When we hear the story about the two dying thieves, I find it interesting that Luke left out so many personal details. Without them, we really don't know what made one thief say, "If you really are the king, for real, why don't you just save yourself, and while you're at it, save me too?" We can only guess why the second thief told the first, "Man, just shut up. You don't even know what you're talking about. This guy, he didn't do nothing wrong. But you and me, we're getting what we deserve." We don't know what then motivated him to say, "Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, remember me." Oh, the questions we could ask. Questions like, what psychosocial factors were going on here? What were their families like? Was there abuse going on in their homes? And by the way, what were their specific crimes? We assume these guys weren't everyday purse snatchers from the streets of Jerusalem. It's interesting that all of this information was simply left out. But the omission speaks volumes. It says, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who your mama was. It doesn't matter who your daddy was. It doesn't matter how many brothers or sisters you had. It doesn't even matter if you grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. None of that matters. When the nitty hit the gritty, the only thing that mattered was that each thief had an opportunity. And to the one who took it, Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." When I was a young child growing up, I remember hearing preachers say over and over that you could come to Jesus just as you are. You could be a gambler, but just come. You could be a prostitute, just come. You could be an addict, but just come. And Jesus would accept you. But I was always curious why they talked about people like that, because I didn't know anyone like that. I knew people like me. And I'd wonder, what about people like me? People who mean so well, but who still mess up so bad. Could we come too? I'm here to tell you that it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. All that matters is what you believe. Whether you believe that Jesus can rescue us, even from ourselves. And as long as we have just one last dying breath, that is enough. That's all we need. Because the only thing that matters is whether or not we believe. For those who do, Jesus promises, today, this day, you will be with me in paradise.
When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near, he said to his mother, "Mother, behold your son." Then he said to his disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. Jesus knows that death is near, that his long suffering is almost at an end. He looks down and through his agony sees his mother standing there at the foot of the cross. His mother. There is the woman who had loved him in the way of mothers his whole life long, who fled with him to Egypt to save an infant life, who searched frantically for him when he was lost as a child, who tried to restrain him from preaching and from healing when she feared for his sanity and wanted to protect him, who, hoping to see him, was kept waiting outside with the crowds while he sat inside with his disciples, pondering the deepest meanings of kinship. Perhaps she never really understood his work. Perhaps in the way of mothers, what she cared about most, what she prayed for, was his safety. And now she stands with the other women, watching her child die an unendurable death. Imagine. Most of the men abandoned Jesus when he was arrested, but there was one who did not. Standing with Mary near the cross is the beloved disciple. And Jesus, looking down, loving this steadfast woman, wishes to give what he could never receive: safety and protection. "Woman, here is your son," he says gently to her. And to his friend, "Here is your mother," thus giving them to one another. And with these words, this mother and this dying son, filled with love for each other, filled with sorrow, complete their earthly circle. "Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother."
From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me? That is a cry of abandonment. Many believers since have tried to explain it away, saying that Jesus was only quoting Psalm 22, which ends on a note of confidence. No, that doesn't work. This quoted cry, because his own statement of his own condition in that eerie darkness of that afternoon. He may have been ready for an innocent death. He was sure of his purpose. But in that pain, and in that chaos, and in that hour, he had nothing left but a cry of God forsakenness. That cry, of course, belongs to the larger plot of the gospel, the story of faith in Jesus, and the one he called Eli, my God. If he had not felt abandoned, his dying would have been only an uncomfortable charade on the way to a resurrection. Here, instead, is the note of realism that has led believers ever since to have confidence that he was the last one who needed to feel utterly abandoned by God. In their view, full of faith, thanks to the love he showed to the world, he affected a new relationship to God. And so they are confident that they will live and die in divine company, never forsaken as he felt he was. And at that moment, as he truly was. My God, why have you forsaken me?
Knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I thirst." A jar of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. Jesus suffered horribly. To his followers and foes alike, it was unthinkable that the Messiah, descended from David, should suffer so. And yet his followers came to believe that this Messiah of David's stock was not only destined to recapitulate King David's glorious reign, but first to suffer as David suffered: abandonment, rejection, and yes, even thirst. To Jesus' followers, 2 Psalms of David recorded particularly rich parallels to Jesus' sufferings, Numbers 22 and 69. And they both mention the thirst of a desperate man. It was not just Jesus' thirst that grabbed their attention, that this was unremarkable. Rather, it was the drink that he was offered. The psalmist wrote, "They gave me vinegar for my thirst," showing how his enemies scored him. But in the hands of Jesus' executioners, this mixture of sour wine and myrrh was actually a small mercy designed to both quench thirst and dull pain. And to the gospel writer, this small charity was also a divine sign. Later, knowing that all was now completed, and so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I thirst." Jesus' thirst was also laced with irony. His executioner's act of mercy is linked to a psalm about scorn and rejection. His body's compelling sense of thirst says, "Drink and live." Yet Jesus knows that he will die. The one who promised, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Streams of living water will flow from within him." That person is now dying of thirst. The life and death of Jesus are full of the most painful ironies, and so is God's world, a world riddled with contradiction. But it is also permeated with hope for a future in which all contradictions will be resolved, a future made possible by the one who endured the supreme contradiction for the sins of the world. I thirst.
When he took the wine, Jesus said, "It is finished." And having bowed his head, he gave over the Spirit. There comes a time when we must let go. We must give up being a baby to become a kid. We must abandon being a kid so that we might be a teen. We must relinquish high school so that we can go to college. We must someday eventually stop being a student and get a job. We must give up the freedom of the single state to marry, to adjust to a spouse, and then to adjust to children. We must someday permit the children to be free so that they can be adults on their terms, not ours. We must give up health and perhaps independence as we grow older. Eventually, we must give up life itself. At each of these times of surrender in our lives, we must trust. We must trust God, other human beings, and ourselves. Dying is not only the end of living, it is part of living. Each new yielding opens up the possibility of something new that is both frightening and appealing. We have no choice in the matter. Every day we must yield our spirit to grace. We can do so stubbornly, reluctantly, with protests and complaints. We can curse the dimming of the light, or we can go gracefully into the night as Jesus did, firm in the knowledge that it is safe to say, "It is finished."
Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And having said that, he breathed his last. I can hear Jesus himself standing amid the agony and the darkness of Good Friday, standing amid the darkness of the cross. And out of the pain and the agony and the darkness of that cross, we hear a voice saying, "Into thy hands I commend my spirit." And then we can hear him saying, "Not my will, but thy will be done." Now you got to learn that, my friends. And when you learn that, you can stand up amid any condition because you know that God is with you no matter what happens. You can stand up amid despair. You can stand up amid persecution. You can stand up amid disappointment. You can stand up even amid death. But you don't worry because you know that God is with you. And so I'm going away. I don't know about you, but I'm going away determined that wherever he leads me, I will follow. I will follow him to the garden. I will follow him to the cross if that's where he wants me to go. I will follow him to the dark valleys of death if he wants me to go there. Not my will, but thy will be done. And when you can cry that, you stand up amid life with an exuberant joy. You know that God walks with you, even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You know that God is there, even though you stand amid the giant shadow of disappointment. You don't despair because you know that God is with you. Behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were now raised. Now when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly this was the Son of God." Father, into your hands I commend my spirit.